Hello everyone. It's been a couple of weeks since I put my quiz questions up, so I thought I'd reveal the correct answers that have been discovered so far, and then give you a few more clues on the ones that haven't been got correctly yet. So I've had a reasonable response, and 9 out of the 20 questions, I believe, yeah, 9 have been answered correctly by various people. So I'll tell you what those were first of all, and then we'll go on to some more clues. So the first one that people got correct was question number 5, which was the Battle of Fredericksburg. So the photograph I showed you was of a sculpture of the Confederate soldier whose name I believe was Kirkland, if I remember correctly, who did a very courageous thing and leapt over the Confederate defences and gave water and succour to some of the Union wounded who were in front of the Confederate positions. Sadly, he died at a later battle, but there's a sculpture on the battlefield to commemorate his bravery and his compassion. So that was the Battle of Fredericksburg. A couple of people got that correct. The next one though, a couple of people got this correct as well. Showed you a photograph of the supposed battle site at Hastings, not at Hastings, at a place that's now called Battle, which is outside of Hastings, where it's reputed that the Battle of Hastings actually took place. Only there has been one proviso on that, is there has been some conjecture recently that the battle actually took place around the corner from the hill slope that I showed you, so that the Anglo-Danes were still defending the top of that hill, but only from an attack from a different direction. But anyway, yeah, a couple of you got that correct, so well done. Again, for the next one, I showed you the breech mechanism of a gun and asked you to identify it, and that was quite easily done by most people, a 25-pounder gun. The next one, I showed you a regimental cap badge, and I should have realised really that that was a pretty easy one to guess, because all you had to do was really Google lions and cap badges and it would have told you that it was the King's Own. So that was correctly answered by everybody who answered. Moving on, I showed you some various Napoleonic figures from a variety of ranges, and they're proving a little bit difficult for people to identify, but Andy Mack is the only person who correctly identified the middle group, which were minifigs. I happen to know that Andy paints up a lot of minifigs. I think he paints the 15mm, but he obviously can spot a minifig when he sees one, and got that correct. A bit further down, I showed you some representations of people, mainly statues, and a few of those, in fact all of them have been ticked off now. Robert Chisholm, who I believe is Canadian, I might be wrong in that, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think Robert is a Canadian, and he correctly identified the statue of Wolfe, which I partly put there for our Canadian viewers because the statue is in Greenwich, close to the Royal Observatory, and it was actually donated by Canada, I think in the 1930s. And I was going to, in a way it's a bit of a shame that Robert got it, because I was going to go on to tease you a little bit more with a clue about how there is some, on the plinth of the statue, there are some shrapnel damage there that has never been repaired. It was just left there. But the Royal Observatory was narrowly missed by a German bomb in the Second World War, and a lot of the shrapnel hit Wolfe's statue, and you can still see the pock marks in plinth of the statue there. So I'll put a little bit of a video up to show you that. Yeah, the next one, only one person got correct, which was Andy Mack again. William of Orange. Not sure how he got that. Maybe it's. I think again I'm half guessing that he comes from the West Country, so he's probably aware that there's a statue of William of Orange on the harbour at Brixham, which is where his fleet landed at the beginning of the Glorious Revolution in 1688. Next one, most people got again. It's the life mask, not the death mask, but a life mask that was taken of Horatio Nelson, which again is in Greenwich, coincidentally in the Maritime Museum in Greenwich. So that was Nelson, and most of you got that. And a couple of you got the next one, which is the statue, which you may have spotted is outside York Minster, and that is a sculpture of the Emperor Constantine, who was based in York at one stage prior to him becoming emperor. But it's outside the cathedral because he was obviously the emperor who converted or adopted Christianity as the sort of state religion of the Roman Empire. Right, so yeah, that's all the correct answers. So now on to some more clues. So there were a couple of questions which were partly answered correctly. So I'm going to give you some more clues to those, but having revealed that they've been partly correctly answered, it will give you a good indication of what the final part of the answers is. So question number one was, I showed you a model building and asked you to identify the battle and the actual building that it represents, and you all guessed correctly that it was, all the people that answered, that it was the Battle of Waterloo, but no one's actually got the building itself. So just by telling you that it was at Waterloo, by process of elimination, you're bound to get it eventually. But I'll put up another photograph that I took way back in the 1980s of the building itself. It's been extended on the left-hand side of this photograph, but the actual building as it appeared in 1815 is the part to the right. So what is that building? No one got the second question, and I didn't expect them to. This is a really tough question. I'm not going to make it a lot easier. I'm just going to, I wanted to know what manufacturer produced the building. So again, this is a manufacturer who was around in the 1980s, and as a secondary clue, I'm going to show you their logo, and the logo in a way is a bit of a cryptic clue as well to their name. It's a kind of cockerel, and if you think about which nation has that as their symbol, for instance for their sports teams and so on, and then think of a classic name rather than the present name of that country, then you'll get the answer to the name of the manufacturer who produced the building. Question number three, nobody got. I expected a few people to say that it was the Battle of Isandlwana, and it isn't, but I know what you mean by your answer, because it's a fairly prominent hill in a very arid landscape, and a lot of you, some of you I know, looked up images of the mountain at Isandlwana or the hill at Isandlwana and realised that the photograph I was showing you wasn't Isandlwana, but I can see where you're coming from in that. But Robert Chisholm remarked that it looked like very parched landscape, so that is going to be my next clue as to where this battle is. It is indeed a very parched landscape, and one of the key elements in the victory of the winning side was that they denied the enemy access to drinking water. So water was a a key factor in this battle. Drinking supply and water was a key factor in this battle. So that's another clue to the question there. The fourth one, again, nobody got, and I didn't expect them to. The clue that I gave you originally, because it is so difficult, is that when I took the photograph, the battlefield was on the other side of the Iron Curtain, and Andy Mack had quite a clever guess that he opted for Austerlitz. Is not correct, but that's a good guess, because that was in eastern Germany, I believe, or somewhere like that, on the other side of the Iron Curtain anyway. But it's not, I'm afraid, wrong guess. So the next clue I'm going to give you for that is that it's a battle of the 30 Years' War. Okay, so that was question 4. Now, question number 9 is the next one that nobody got the answer to. I showed you some Napoleonic figures, asked you to identify the range that they came from. Next question I'm going to give you then might give the game away, but I'll do it anyway. Their address was the Enchanted Cottage. So what is the range? And Andy Mack got the minifigs for question 10, but question 11, another group of Napoleonic figures from an old range, doesn't exist anymore, and I asked you what they were. No one got that. I didn't really expect them to, because this is a really tough one. So my next question for that is the range came from a town in Cambridgeshire, and that was the name. They took the name of the town as the name of the manufacturer. So what manufacturer produced that range of Napoleonic figures, and it's the name of a town in Cambridgeshire. 12th one, again very difficult. I showed you a close-up of an object, and I wanted you to identify the object and where it is. So as my next clue to that, this is quite obscure, I'll give you quite a broad hint, that it's related to an incident that happened during the Cold War, and I'll show you a photograph of what is now a disused American base, and additionally I'll say the clue is related to unexpected visitors at that base over the Christmas holiday period. So that should give the incident away, but in particular, remember, I want to know what the close-up of the object is as well. Right, now the next question, it was partly answered correctly by Andy Mack in that he identified the helmet, but not the British general who wore it. So having given you what he's answered correctly so far, you should be able to just look this up, but I'll leave it hanging in the air there for you. But Andy correctly identified that it's a helmet of the Heavy Brigade of the cavalry, and it received its dent at the Battle of Balaklava in the Crimean War. So basically, which general was wearing it? That's all I need to know now. The commander of that brigade. Right, moving on. None of you got any of the naval questions correct. I'll give you a clue for question 18. I wanted to know what ship it was, and all I'll say is that it's not a fighting vessel, or it wasn't a fighting vessel. A few of you had guesses at the Constitution, HMS Victory, someone said. Someone answered something else as well, but no one was correct, I'm afraid. So the next clue is it's not a fighting vessel. And again, for the 19th question, no one guessed that correctly, but someone guessed the Golden Hind, incorrect I'm afraid. So they've got this sort of fairly accurate period. So as a further clue to that one, I'll say, like the Golden Hind, it was a vessel which circumnavigated the globe. and leave it at that for the moment. And the 20th, the final question, I showed you a sketch of a naval engagement and asked you to identify the engagement. Robert Chisholm spotted that there was an Australian flag on it, and he was correct in that, and he guessed, I forget where he guessed, but Leyte Gulf in the Second World War. It wasn't that, I'm afraid. So our next clue will be that it was a First World War engagement. Okay, right, good luck with any just guess at anything, even if you haven't got much of an idea, just to join in. I hope you're enjoying it, and in a couple of weeks' time I'll update you again with any further questions that have been guessed correctly and give you some more clues to the ones you haven't got. Thanks very much for taking part in this, and see you again soon. Bye for now.